At my wedding, the man I was about to marry told me he had been in love with my sister for 10 years. He said it like a confession. I heard it like a verdict. I want to be clear about one thing before I tell you the rest. I did not scream. I did not run. I did not faint into anyone's arms. I stood there. That's important. People like to imagine betrayal as something loud, explosive, cinematic. It isn't. It's quiet. It tightens. It waits. The church smelled like lilies and money. My mother's money. His family's money. The kind of flowers that exist only to look pure while they rot from the inside. Sunlight came through the stained glass and painted everyone's faces in borrowed colors. Blue devotion, red sacrifice, gold forgiveness. Forgiveness was already in the room. It just wasn't for me. I was holding my bouquet too tightly. I remember noticing that first. My fingers hurt. White roses. My sister had insisted on white roses. She has such taste, people said. My sister sat in the second row on the left. Perfect posture. Perfect hair, perfect stillness. She looked like a woman attending a wedding she had already survived. I did not look at her. I looked at him, my husband. Not yet. Almost. He stood at the altar with his hands folded, jaw tense, eyes too honest for a man about to lie. That should have warned me. He had always been good at lying when it served him. When he stopped, it meant something had shifted. The officiant asked if there was anything he wanted to say before we began. That wasn't part of the script. He glanced at me. Not lovingly, not apologetically, resolutely. I can't do this without telling the truth, he said. People leaned forward. They always do. They love a moment that doesn't belong to them. My mother's smile froze. His father's brow tightened. Someone laughed softly, thinking this was a joke. A nervous, charming detour before vows and applause. I already knew it wasn't. I've loved someone else, he said. The word else landed gently. Like padding. Like mercy. For 10 years. 10 years. Our entire relationship had been 8. There was a sound then. A collective intake of breath. The kind of sound crowds make when they realize they're about to witness damage they don't have to clean up. I waited. I needed to hear the name. I needed him to say it. He turned his head. He looked directly at my sister. I've loved her since before I met you. Silence collapsed inward. Heavy. Final. My sister's hand flew to her mouth. A practiced gesture. Too fast. Too neat. She shook her head as if refusing something she had already accepted long ago. No, she whispered. Just loud enough to be heard. Just soft enough to sound innocent. I felt something inside me rearrange. Not break. Rearrange. 10 years. That meant holidays, late-night phone calls, every strange absence that never quite added up. Every moment I thought I was paranoid. Every time I apologized for asking questions that made him tired. That meant I was never the mistake. I was the cover. The officiant cleared his throat. Poor man. He had married people who hated each other, people who barely knew each other, people who should never have been allowed near shared finances. But this was new. This was a live autopsy. I thought, my almost husband continued, that I could bury it, that if I chose you, it would disappear. Chose. I almost smiled. But love doesn't work like that. No, power does. He looked back at me then. Finally. His eyes were wet. That mattered to the audience. It was supposed to matter to me. I couldn't start our marriage with a lie. That was when I understood something essential. This wasn't repentance. This was performance. If he truly cared about honesty, he would have told me in private. Years ago. Before invitations, before deposits, before vows written in calligraphy ink that cost more than my first apartment. He told the truth here because this was the place where it would hurt the most. And because, on some level, he wanted to be punished. People who confess in public aren't brave. They're selfish. I turned slowly. I looked out at the faces I had known my whole life. Aunts, friends, colleagues. People who had hugged me an hour earlier and told me how lucky I was. Every one of them was watching me now, waiting to see what kind of woman I would become in the next 30 seconds. The abandoned one, the hysterical one, the forgiving one. I gave them none of it. I walked to the microphone. My dress was heavy. The train whispered behind me like a warning. I felt calm in a way that scared me. There was no ringing in my ears, no blur, just clarity, sharp and clean. "I appreciate your honesty," I said. Murmurs, confusion, relief. They thought this was going somewhere safe. "I'm grateful you chose today to share it." My sister looked up at me then. Our eyes met. There it was. Recognition. She knew I understood. "But this wedding," I continued, "is not canceled." Gasps. His hand twitched. He hadn't expected this. He had expected chaos or absolution. Men like him always do. "It's just been redefined." I turned to the guests. "You're not here to witness a marriage," I said. "You're here to witness the death of an illusion." Silence again. Different this time. Thinner. Edged. "I won't marry a man who loved someone else for 10 years and chose me as a solution. I won't compete with my own sister for a place I was never meant to occupy." My mother stood up. I lifted one finger. She sat back down. "This ceremony will continue," I said, "but not as planned." I looked at him. "You don't get forgiveness today?" His face crumpled. "Good. You don't get redemption?" "Better. And you don't get to walk away quietly." I turned back to the crowd. "You'll stay," I said, "or you'll leave knowing exactly why." I handed my bouquet to the officiant. "They've already paid you," I said. "You might as well earn it." People didn't move. They never do when truth enters the room uninvited. It roots them in place. That was the moment I decided something else, too. I would not disappear in grief. I would not destroy myself for their comfort. And I would not settle for private revenge. This wedding would be remembered, not as a tragedy, as a reckoning. And this was only the beginning. No one left. That's the first thing you should understand about people. They don't leave a spectacle. They stay for it. The guests sat frozen in their polished pews like they'd paid admission. Someone's phone camera lifted, then lowered when my mother's stare cut through the aisle like a blade. My father looked like he'd aged 10 years in 60 seconds. My husband, still standing at the altar, kept blinking as if the world might reset if he tried hard enough. It didn't. The officiant cleared his throat again. His hands trembled. He was a man trained to guide people through sacred moments, and I had just dragged something profane into his hands. He began. I leaned toward the microphone. "Keep going." My voice didn't shake. That's what unsettled them. If I'd sobbed, they could have filed me away as a victim and moved on. Calm made me dangerous. Calm meant I was thinking. My sister finally stood. She started, voice breaking at the perfect place, right where innocence lives. "I didn't ask for this." I turned my head slowly, like someone examining a stain. "You didn't ask to be loved?" I said. "Or you didn't ask to be chosen?" Her mouth opened and closed. She looked at the crowd, searching for someone to adopt her as their wounded child. There were takers. Of course there were. My aunt clutched her pearls. A bridesmaid put a hand over her heart like she might have a heart attack on my behalf. My mother made a small, strangled sound that meant not like this, not in public. That was always her fear. Not betrayal, not cruelty, not my pain. Public. My husband tried to step toward me. "Please," he whispered, as if this was an argument we could settle in the kitchen later. I lifted my hand. He stopped. Men like him always stop when a woman finally believes her own boundaries. "Don't come closer," I said. "You don't get to touch me after that." His face tightened. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I let that hang for a second. Then I nodded once, like I'd accepted a minor correction. "Of course you did," I said. "You just wanted to feel clean afterward." The officiant shifted, uncertain. I turned to him. "Say whatever you need to say for the room," I told him, "but keep it simple. This isn't about religion, it's about reality." He swallowed hard and spoke into the microphone, voice thin. "We are gathered here today." The words sounded absurd now, like trying to play classical music over a fire alarm. I stepped down from the altar and walked to the front pew. My mother's hands were clenched so tight her knuckles looked bleached. "Stop this!" she hissed through her smile. "We can handle it privately." Privately. Like a secret. Like shame. I leaned in close enough that only she could hear. "This is the private version," I said. "Public would be me telling them what you've known." Her eyes widened. Just a flicker. But it was there. So she knew. Not everything, maybe, but enough. I straightened and looked at my father. He was staring at my sister like he'd never seen her before. That's what the truth does. It changes faces. My sister's voice floated again, soft and trembling. "I'm sorry." It was a good performance. The kind that earns forgiveness in family rooms and holiday dinners. The kind that makes the betrayed woman feel petty for still bleeding. I turned toward her. "If you were sorry," I said, "you would have told me years ago." She flinched, and I saw it. Anger behind the tears. The kind of anger people get when you refuse to let them be the hero in the story they ruined. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said. "No," I replied. "You didn't want consequences." My husband finally spoke again, louder now. "This isn't her fault." That's when I almost laughed. Of course he protected her. That was the whole point. He wasn't confessing love. He was transferring guilt. Off her, onto me, onto fate, onto anything else. I looked at him. "Don't rewrite history," I said. "Not today, not in front of witnesses." Witnesses. That word mattered. I turned back to the crowd, to the people who had toasted us at the rehearsal dinner, who had posted photos of my ring like it was their own accomplishment, who had smiled in my face while my sister sat there, quiet and perfect, holding a secret like a weapon. "I'm going to ask you all to do something," I said. The room quieted even more. "Stay seated," I told them. "No one speaks unless I ask them to. This is not a debate. It's an unveiling." My mother's breathing turned sharp. My father's gaze dropped. My sister's face went pale because she understood something I don't think anyone else did yet. I wasn't improvising. I had a plan. Not a full one. Not yet. But I could feel the shape of it forming in my chest. Cold and precise. Because when you've been lied to long enough, you learn to collect details without knowing why. You remember the odd text, the sudden silence, the way your sister's laughter got tighter whenever he entered the room, the way he never met your eyes when you talked about family, and you remember the moment you realized you were never paranoid. You were right. I walked back toward the altar, slowly, and took the microphone again. "My name is," I began. Everyone already knew my name. But saying it out loud did something. It anchored me. It made me reel in a moment where they wanted to turn me into a cautionary tale. "I am not going to marry him," I said, "but I am going to finish what we started today." I looked at the wedding party, my bridesmaids, the groomsmen, people who had smiled too easily all weekend, like the air was full of something they weren't saying. "Some of you knew," I said, a sharp inhale from the left side. "Some of you helped." My husband's best man went rigid. My maid of honor's eyes flicked away from mine. There it was. Confirmation without words. I nodded once, calmly. "Good," I said. "That saves time." Then I turned and faced my sister fully. "Stand next to him," I told H. Her eyes flashed. "What?" "Stand next to him," I repeated. "Since he's been loving you for a decade, you should at least be present for the funeral of the lie." The crowd murmured. My mother stood halfway up, then sat again when my father's hand closed around her wrist. My sister looked around like a trapped animal. Then she walked, slow, reluctant, up the steps and stopped beside him. He reached for her hand. She didn't take it. Interesting. So even she had limits, just not the ones that protected me. I stepped back, giving them space at the altar, the way you step back from a casket so everyone can see what's inside. "This," I said, gesturing to them, "is what my marriage has been competing with." I let the words settle. "And now," I continued, "we're going to talk about what 10 years actually means." I looked at my husband. "Tell them," I said. He swallowed. His throat worked like he was trying to force down the truth. "Tell them," I repeated, softer. "When did it start?" His eyes darted to my sister. She gave the smallest shake of her head. A warning. I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. He opened his mouth. And that was the moment my phone vibrated in my hand. One message. From an unknown number. 3 words. "Don't do this." I stared at the screen. Then I looked up. Past the altar, past the faces, until my eyes landed on the back of the church. A man I didn't recognize stood near the doors, half in shadow, watching me. Still, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a confession. It was a trap. And I had just stepped into it with perfect posture and a microphone in my hand. I didn't react right away. That unsettled him. Whoever sent that message expected panic. A glance around the room. A crack in my voice. People like that rely on interruption, on fear-breaking rhythm. I let my phone rest in my palm and kept my eyes on my husband. "Well," I said. The man at the back of the church shifted his weight, just slightly, like he was preparing for movement or escape. My husband's lips parted, closed, opened again. "It started before we met," he said finally. "We were friends first, your sister and I." Friends? Always the word men hide behind when they want to sound harmless. "How long before?" I asked. He hesitated. "Years," he said. That wasn't an answer. I turned my head toward my sister. She was pale now, not porcelain pretty pale, but drained. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Her eyes were fixed on the floor like it might open and take her with it. "Tell me," I said, "because he's going to minimize it." Her jaw tightened. For a second, I thought she might lie outright. Then she sighed. "We were in college," she said. "I was 19. A ripple moved through the church. That age lands differently when spoken aloud. "And you?" I asked him. 23. I nodded once. "So when you met me," I said, "you already loved her." "Yes." The word echoed louder than it deserved. "And when you proposed to me?" "Yes." A few people gasped. Someone whispered my name like a prayer. I ignored them. "And when we bought a house together?" "Yes." "And when you stood in my kitchen and told me I was the only one who really understood you?" He flinched. That one landed. "Yes," he whispered. I turned to the guests. "He has never chosen me," I said calmly. "He chose stability. He chose silence. He chose the woman who wouldn't make him feel guilty for wanting what he couldn't have." I looked back at my sister. "And you," I said, "chose convenience." She snapped her head up. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "It's accurate." She stepped forward, voice trembling now with real emotion, or something close to it. "I loved him," she said, "but I didn't want to destroy your life." I tilted my head, studied her. "You didn't want to destroy it," I said. "You just wanted access to it." The man at the back of the church took a step closer to the aisle. I noticed. I always notice now. "Who is he?" I asked suddenly. The room stilled. My sister froze. My husband turned, following my gaze. The man stopped walking. "Interesting." "Who is that man?" I repeated, louder. My mother stood up this time, fully. "Enough," she said sharply. "This has gone far enough." I looked at her. "You should sit down," I said, "because if he speaks before I do, you won't like what comes next." Her mouth tightened. She sat. The man hesitated, then started forward again. "I think we should talk privately," he said. His voice was calm, professional, the kind of calm that's practiced. "No," I said. "We should talk here." He smiled. It was thin, controlled. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I'm just here to make sure things don't escalate." That word again. Escalate. "Who sent the message?" I asked him. He didn't answer. My husband stared between us. "What message?" I held up my phone so everyone could see the screen. "Don't do this." "That," I said, "arrived 30 seconds ago." A low murmur spread through the pews. "From who?" someone whispered. Daniel inhaled slowly, like he was deciding how much truth this room could handle. "I represent the family," he said carefully. "My family?" I asked. He hesitated. "Some interests connected to your sister," he said. I laughed then. Just once. Dry. "Say it properly," I said. "You work for them." The silence that followed was different, heavy with implication. I turned to my sister again. "You didn't just keep a secret," I said. "You outsourced it." Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time. But it was too late. Tears don't erase structure. They just leak around it. "He wanted to stop this," she said. "He said it would humiliate everyone." I nodded. "Yes, that's the point." Daniel stepped closer. "You're angry," he said gently. "That's understandable. But there are reputations involved, careers, legal consequences." There it was, the real threat. I stepped toward him until we were only a few feet apart. "Do you know why I'm not shaking?" I asked him. He didn't answer. "Because this already happened," I said, just not out loud. I turned back to the guests. "My sister didn't just sleep with my fiancé," I said. "She helped build the version of my life you've all been applauding for years." My mother made a sound like she'd been struck. "She knew when he proposed," I continued. "She knew when I moved cities for him. She knew when I turned down opportunities because he needed me present." I looked directly at my sister. "You helped him keep me manageable," I said. "That's not love. That's collaboration." Daniel raised his hand slightly. "We can still contain this." I smiled at him. "You're too late." I reached into my clutch, pulled out a folded stack of papers. Gasps. "I asked for copies," I said, unfolding them slowly. "Phone records, hotel receipts, emails you forgot to delete." My husband's face drained of color. My sister whispered, "How?" I looked at her. "You taught me how to watch quietly," I said. "You just forgot I was smarter than you." I turned to the officiant. "You might want to step back," I told him. "This part gets messy." Then I held the papers up for everyone to see. 10 years, I said, and not one clean lie among them. Daniel took a sharp step forward. "You can't—" I cut him off. "Sit down," I said. He didn't. So I did something unexpected. I handed the papers to the woman in the front row. A family friend, a lawyer. "Read," I said. She hesitated, then unfolded the first page. Her expression changed. That's when I knew. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was evidence. And everyone in that church was about to understand something very simple. This wasn't revenge. This was exposure. And exposure doesn't ask permission. The lawyer stood slowly. I watched her the way you watch a storm cloud decide whether it's going to break. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't gasp or clutch her chest. She simply adjusted her glasses and read the first page. Her mouth tightened. That was all. She cleared her throat. "This appears to be a series of emails," she said, voice steady, "spanning nearly a decade." My husband took a step forward. "You don't need to—" She lifted a finger without looking at him. "I do," she said. The room leaned in. Even the people who wanted this to stop needed to know how bad it really was. People crave confirmation of their worst instincts. It lets them feel wise instead of complicit. She read dates, cities, times, hotel reservations booked under variations of his name, email threads archived and revived like old habits, messages my sister had sent at 2:13 a.m., messages he replied to at 2:14. Consistency is the loudest proof. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh my God." The lawyer stopped reading and looked up. "This isn't an affair," she said. "It's a parallel relationship." Yes, that word mattered. My sister let out a sob. Real this time. Uncontrolled. The kind that shakes something loose instead of protecting it. My mother stood again. "Please," she said. "Enough. This is humiliating." I turned slowly. "No," I said. "This is accurate." I stepped closer to her, close enough that she could see there was no anger left in my face, just certainty. "You raised us to be presentable," I said. "Not honest. This is what presentability costs." She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Good. The lawyer continued, quieter now. "There are also references to financial transfers." That landed hard. My husband snapped his head up. That's not. She looked directly at him. It is. The room shifted. Money changes everything. People will forgive betrayal. They won't forgive deception with receipts. There are joint accounts referenced here, she said, and private accounts established prior to the engagement. My sister's knees buckled. She grabbed the edge of the altar to steady herself. I watched him then. My almost husband, the man I had planned a future with. His face had changed. The remorse was gone. Now there was calculation. That was who he really was. Daniel stepped forward again. "This is spiraling," he said. "We can still resolve this quietly." I turned to him. "Quietly is what allowed it," I said. "You're confusing peace with silence." He lowered his voice. "There will be consequences for you, too." I nodded. "I know." That surprised him. "You think I walked in here unprepared?" I asked. "You think I didn't consider what it would cost to burn the house instead of sleeping in it?" I turned back to the guests. "I want to say something very clearly," I said, "because stories like this get rewritten fast." I gestured to the altar, to my sister, to the man who had nearly become my husband. "I did not lose a fiancé today," I said. "I returned one." A few people inhaled sharply. "I did not lose a sister," I continued. "I discovered I never had one." My sister looked up at me then, eyes red and wild. "That's not true," she said hoarsely. "I loved you." I nodded. "I believe you." Her face flickered with relief. "You just loved yourself more." The relief vanished. The lawyer folded the papers. "You should speak to counsel," she said quietly. "To them, not me." Daniel's jaw tightened. I stepped back to the microphone one last time. "This was supposed to be a wedding," I said. "And it is." Confusion rippled again. "It's just not a union," I continued. "It's a burial." I looked at my dress. White. Heavy. Symbolic in a way that suddenly felt ironic. "I dressed for the life I thought I was entering," I said. "Instead, I'm closing the one that was built without my consent." I slipped the ring off my finger, held it up. "This belongs to the fantasy," I said, and placed it gently on the altar. "Not to me." I turned to my sister. "You can have him," I said, "but you should know. He will always need a woman willing to disappear for him." I looked at him. "And you will always choose the woman who makes that easiest." Neither of them spoke. They couldn't, because I had named it. I stepped down from the altar. People parted instinctively, like I was carrying something contagious. Maybe I was. At the doors, I stopped, turned back. "One last thing," I said. Everyone froze. "If anyone here plans to protect them," I said calmly, "do it openly, because I won't protect your reputation the way I protected theirs." I let that settle. Then I walked out of the church alone. No music, no applause, no collapse. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean, like the world after a fire. I didn't know yet what I would do next. I only knew this. I hadn't ruined a wedding. I had told the truth in a room built on pretending, and once truth is spoken in public, it doesn't go back into the box. It waits for what comes next. The doors closed behind me with a sound too soft for what it meant. Outside, the sun was still shining. That felt rude. I stood on the church steps for a moment, my dress heavy against my legs, my spine straight out of habit. Somewhere inside, someone was crying. Somewhere else, someone was negotiating damage control. I was no longer involved. That realization came with a strange lightness, like stepping off a stage after a long performance and realizing the audience can't follow you backstage. A few people rushed out after me. Of course they did. My maid of honor was first. Her heels clicked too fast against the stone. "Wait," she said, breathless. "Please." I turned. She looked wrecked, mascara smudged, hair coming loose. A woman who had bet on the wrong outcome and was now scrambling to look innocent. "How long?" I asked. She froze. "How long did you know?" Her mouth opened, closed. "That's what I thought," I said. She reached for me. I stepped back. "I need to explain," she said. "No," I replied. "You needed to explain before today. That distinction matters. Timing is the difference between accountability and opportunism. She started crying in earnest then. I let her. Tears are not currency anymore. Behind her, my mother emerged, flanked by my father. My sister stayed inside. Wise. She would not survive the light right now. My mother's face was tight with purpose. This was crisis mode, the mode she used when neighbors whispered or family photos needed editing. "We can still salvage this," she said. I almost admired the commitment. "Salvage what?" I asked. "The situation," she said quickly. "Your future? We'll say you called it off because of doubts. People don't need details." I looked at her for a long moment. "People already have details," I said. "You just don't control them anymore." My father spoke then, quietly. "Let's go home." I shook my head. There is no home after this. That hurt him. I saw it land, but he didn't argue. He never did when things got real. That was my mother's job. "Think," she hissed. "You don't want to be that woman?" I smiled. Small, cold. "I already am," I said. "The difference is, I chose it." A black car pulled up to the curb. Daniel stepped out. I watched him approach like a man stepping into a cage he thought he owned. "This isn't finished," he said. "No," I agreed. "It's just started without you." He lowered his voice. "You've exposed yourself as well. People will talk." I met his eyes. "They already are," I said. "The question is who they believe." He studied me, recalibrating. "You could still negotiate," he offered. "There are settlements, agreements, non-disclosure." I laughed then. "Not sharp, just tired." "You misunderstand me," I said. "I don't want silence. I want accuracy." His jaw tightened. "You'll regret this," he said. I leaned in slightly. "Just enough." "No," I said. "I'll remember it." That difference scared him. I saw it. He stepped back. The car drove away. The crowd began to disperse in awkward clusters. Some avoided looking at me. Some stared too long. A few nodded, almost imperceptibly, like soldiers acknowledging a shared reality. One woman I barely knew, an acquaintance of his, stepped forward. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know." I believed her. "Thank you," I said. "Now you do." She hesitated. "If you need anything." I shook my head. "I don't." That surprised her. It surprised me too. I walked down the steps and onto the sidewalk. My dress brushed against strangers. My veil caught on nothing and everything. I felt exposed and untouchable at the same time. A car horn sounded, a bus passed, life continued with cruel efficiency. I took off my shoes, held them in my hand. Bare feet on cold pavement grounded me in a way vows never had. My phone buzzed. Messages stacked fast now, friends, family, numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't read them. I turned it off. That mattered too. I walked. No destination. Just movement. Away from the building where my life had almost been sealed into something smaller than I was. I thought about revenge then. Real revenge. The kind that ruins reputations quietly, that moves money, that leaves people blinking at their reflection, unsure how it turned so unfamiliar. I was capable of it. That knowledge settled calmly in my chest. But I also thought about something else. Relief. Not joy, not triumph. Relief. Because I hadn't married a lie. I hadn't swallowed the truth to keep the peace. I hadn't taught myself to survive by shrinking. I reached a park and sat on a bench, lifted my face to the sun, let it hit skin that no longer belonged to anyone else's story. Inside the church, they would be arguing now, assigning blame, rewriting motives, choosing who to protect. They would learn something soon enough. You can't control a woman who has already lost what she was afraid to lose. And I was done being afraid. The wedding was over. The reckoning was not. I made it 3 blocks before my phone came back on. That was deliberate. I wanted to choose the moment I re-entered the noise. It exploded instantly. Missed calls, voicemails stacked like wreckage, texts that started formal and ended panicked. People who had been quiet for years suddenly remembered my name. I didn't listen to most of them. Patterns matter more than apologies. My mother left 6 voicemails, each one shorter than the last. Control slipping syllable by syllable. My sister left none. That told me everything. I sat on a low concrete wall outside a closed cafe and scrolled. Not messages, but contacts. I stopped on one name I hadn't touched in a long time. Not family, not a friend. A woman who had once told me, very gently, "If you ever need to leave fast, call me." I pressed dial. She picked up on the second ring. "So," she said. "It finally happened." I exhaled. "You knew." "I suspected," she replied. "You don't build that kind of tension by accident." I closed my eyes. "I don't need comfort." "I wouldn't offer it," she said. "What do you need?" That's the difference between people who see clearly and people who want to be needed. "I need distance," I said. "And I need leverage." She paused. Thought. "Come to my office," she said. "Tonight." I hung up without thanks. She didn't need it. Another call came through. Unknown number. I answered this one. "Hello?" His voice came through measured and calm, like he was reading from a version of himself he trusted. "You made a mistake." "Daniel." "Good," I said. I was worried I'd behaved predictably. "This isn't over," he said. "You embarrassed powerful people." I leaned back, watching traffic pass like it didn't care. "No," I said. "I embarrassed dishonest ones." "You think exposure equals victory?" he said. "It doesn't. It creates enemies." I smiled. "I already had enemies," I replied. "They just pretended to be family." Silence stretched. "You'll get an offer?" he said finally. "Soon. It will be generous." I pictured it immediately. Money, silence, a clean exit packaged as mercy. "No," I said. "You'll get resistance. It will be expensive." His breath sharpened. "You're emotional." I laughed. That one actually surprised him. "I'm precise," I said. "You should adjust." He hung up. I sat there for another minute, letting the air settle back into my lungs. Then I stood. I walked to my car, still decorated with ribbons and flowers someone had tied that morning like a promise. I pulled them off one by one, let them fall onto the pavement. Symbols lose power when you remove them yourself. Inside the car, I finally listened to one voicemail. My husband. His voice was raw, not remorseful. Raw like a man whose safety net had been cut without warning. "Please," he said, "we need to talk. You don't understand what you've done." I stopped the message. I understood exactly. I drove. The office was quiet when I arrived. Night quiet, the kind that makes decisions clearer. She was already there, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. She looked at me for a long moment. "You look steady," she said. "I am," I replied. "That scares people." She nodded. "As it should." She gestured to a chair. "Tell me everything." So I did. Not dramatically, not emotionally. I laid it out the way truth likes to be laid out. Chronological, unflinching, documented. She listened without interruption. When I finished, she folded her hands. "They thought today would end you," she said. "Yes." "And instead you marked them." "Yes." She smiled slightly. "Good." I leaned forward. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want accuracy." She met my gaze. "Those are the same thing when done properly." We started outlining. Names, accounts, patterns. Who benefited, who facilitated, who stayed quiet because quiet kept them comfortable. This wasn't rage work. It was architecture. By the time I stood to leave, the night had deepened. The city outside felt different, sharper, more honest. At the door, she stopped me. "One more thing," she said. "They'll try to make you doubt yourself." I nodded. "I know." "They'll call you dramatic, unstable, vindictive." "I know." She held my gaze. "Don't correct them." I paused, considered. "Let them," I said. "It keeps them careless." I stepped into the night. Somewhere they were scrambling, calling favors, offering deals, convincing themselves this could still be contained. They were wrong, because the worst thing you can do to people like that isn't to hurt them. It's to remove their ability to control the narrative. And I had already taken the microphone. By morning, the story had spread faster than they could cauterize it. That's the problem with truth when it's witnessed. It doesn't stay put. It migrates. It grows legs. It shows up in rooms you didn't invite it into. I woke up in a hotel room I'd booked under my own name. No shared accounts, no explanations, just a clean credit card swipe and silence afterward. There were messages waiting, hundreds now. I didn't read them yet. I made coffee, black, stood by the window, watched the city move like nothing had happened. That steadied me. At 9:12 a.m., the first official counteroffer arrived. An email, carefully worded, polite, bloodless. We regret the events of yesterday and would like to discuss an amicable resolution that protects all parties involved. Protects? All parties? That phrase always means not you. I forwarded it to the woman from the office with one line attached. As predicted. She replied within seconds. Good. Don't respond yet. At 10:03, my mother called again. I answered this one. Where are you? She demanded. Safe, I said, which is new. You've made a mess, she snapped. People are calling me. I closed my eyes. That's interesting, I said. No one called me when I was being lied to. She inhaled sharply. This could have been handled privately. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her uncomfortable. Private for who? I asked. Because it wasn't private for me. You humiliated your sister. No, I said. I revealed her. There's a difference. She knew it. She just didn't want it said aloud. They're willing to make this right, she said quickly, financially. There it was. Who is they? I asked. A pause. Too long. That's not important. I smiled. It's the only thing that is. She lowered her voice. You don't understand the consequences of pushing this. I opened my eyes and looked at my reflection in the glass. I understand them perfectly, I said. I just decided they were worth it. She switched tactics then. Softer, maternal, dangerous. You'll regret burning bridges, she said. I didn't burn bridges, I replied. I stopped pretending they led somewhere. She hung up on me. That was new too. At noon, my husband finally tried again. I let it ring, watched his name light up my phone like a bad habit. Then I answered. What? I said. Please, he said immediately. Just listen. I said nothing. I never wanted to hurt you, he said. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. I leaned back against the bed. That's the truest thing you've said, I replied. You never wanted it to look like this. Silence. They're telling me you're refusing to negotiate, he said. They? I asked. He exhaled. You know who? Say it, I said. My parents. Her parents. Everyone. Everyone. The collective shield of people who benefit from things staying exactly as they are. You should take the deal, he said quietly. It's generous. I'm sure, I replied. How much am I worth today? That's not fair. I laughed softly. It's the only fair question left. You're destroying lives, he said. No, I corrected. I'm returning them to their owners. He grew angry then. Real anger. The mask slipping. You're doing this to punish us. I sat up straighter. No, I said. I'm doing this because I refuse to disappear quietly so you can feel absolved. He lowered his voice. What do you want? I thought about that. Not emotionally, practically. I want the truth to stand on its own, I said. No statements, no spin, no silence payments. That's impossible. Then you should have thought of that 10 years ago. I ended the call. At 2:17 p.m., Daniel emailed again. More direct this time. If this continues, litigation will be unavoidable. I forwarded it again. They're escalating. The reply came back. Good. That means they're scared. I spent the afternoon assembling something they hadn't accounted for. A timeline. Not dramatic, not accusatory, just dates, actions, outcomes. Who knew? When they knew. What they did with that knowledge? It was meticulous. Boring, even. That's what makes it lethal. At 6:30 p.m., I received a message from my sister. The first one. Can we talk? Just us. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed, no, 3 letters. Complete sentence. Immediately, another message appeared. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, because intention without accountability is just another lie. By evening, the offers had stopped. That was telling. When people stop offering, it means they've shifted to planning. Good. Let them plan. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. And I wasn't interested in winning a war that depended on secrecy. They had one weapon left: discredit me. And the irony was, they didn't realize how much that would cost them. Because a woman who tells the truth once in public is dangerous. A woman who keeps telling it calmly afterward, that's irreversible. And they had no idea what I was about to release next. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was spiraling, because I was editing. There's a difference. At 3:41 a.m., I finalized the document. No adjectives, no accusations, no emotional language they could point to and call unstable. Just facts. A timeline of 10 years, cross-referenced messages, dates that matched travel records, financial overlaps that explained more than affection ever could, and one paragraph at the top. Short. Surgical. This is not a personal statement. This is a record. I read it twice, then once more, out loud. It held. At 6:58 a.m., I sent it to 3 people. Not journalists, not friends, accountants. The kind who don't care about drama, only discrepancies. At 7:12 a.m., I sent it to 1 more. The woman who had once told me to call if I needed to leave fast. Ready. Her reply came back immediately. Release at 9 o'clock. I showered, slowly. Let the hot water hit skin that felt older and stronger than it had a week ago. I dressed in plain clothes. No makeup, no armor, just myself. At 8:47, my phone rang. Daniel. I answered. Stop, he said without preamble. No, I replied. You don't understand what you're about to do. I understand exactly, I said. You're about to lose control of the order. His voice hardened. This will get ugly. It already is, I said. You just weren't the one bleeding. A pause, then quietly. What do you want? I thought about it. Really thought. I want you to remember this moment, I said, because it's the last time you'll believe you can scare me. I hung up. At 9 a.m. on the dot, the document went live. No headline, no commentary, just a file link and a timestamp. Within minutes, the calls started. Not apologies this time, questions, clarifications. Voices that had been confident yesterday now thin with urgency. At 9:14, my husband called. I didn't answer. At 9:17, my sister did. I didn't answer. At 9:23, my mother sent a single message. You've gone too far. I replied once. You taught me how far was acceptable. After that, I put the phone face down. By noon, the story had shifted. Not wedding disaster. Not jilted bride. Something colder, something harder to dismiss. Patterns. By early afternoon, the first quiet resignations began. Advisory boards stepping back. Personal reasons. Time with family. The kind of exits that pretend they're voluntary. At 4:06 p.m., I received an email marked urgent, a revised offer, larger, faster, more desperate. I forwarded it without comment. The reply came back. They're trying to buy time. Don't give it to them. At sunset, I walked again. Same city, different wait. People passed me who had read my name that day. I could feel it. The second glances, the recalibration. I didn't lower my eyes. Inside, somewhere deep and quiet, something else shifted too. The need for revenge faded, not because they didn't deserve consequences, but because consequences had already begun without me chasing them. That's when I understood the truth I hadn't allowed myself to before. Perfect revenge requires obsession. Exposure does not. Exposure is patient. Exposure lets other people do the work. I reached the edge of the park and sat. My phone buzzed once more. A message from an unknown number. We should talk. I smiled faintly. They always say that when the ground gives way. I typed back 2 words. We already did. I turned the phone off again. The wedding had been a funeral. This was the autopsy. And there was still one part left. Not theirs. Mine, the silence afterward was the strangest part. Not peace, not relief, vacuum. When you pull something rotten out by the root, the space it leaves behind doesn't immediately fill with anything good. It just sits there, exposed, waiting to see what you'll build, or whether you'll rush to cover it again out of habit. I didn't rush. I let the days pass without reacting to every tremor. I watched consequences unfold without inserting myself into them. That discipline mattered. The old version of me would have chased resolution like a debt. I let it come to me instead. It did. Quietly. My husband's firm released a statement that said nothing and implied everything. He stepped down temporarily. The word temporary is a lie people tell when they're hoping memory will soften facts. It didn't. My sister left town. No announcement, no goodbye. She took a break that everyone understood was exile without the dignity of naming it. She sent one email, long, apologetic, filled with explanations that confused remorse with self-justification. I archived it unread. Understanding someone does not require absorbing their poison. My mother stopped calling. That was harder than I expected, not because I missed her voice, but because the absence confirmed what I had always suspected and never allowed myself to say. Her love had terms. I had violated them. My father sent a single text. "I'm proud of you." I stared at it for a long time before replying. I know. That was enough. The city returned to normal around me. People went back to their routines. My name faded from headlines into footnotes. That's how these things work. Public outrage has a short attention span. Truth doesn't need one. I went back to work, sat at my desk, answered emails, finished projects I'd started before the wedding existed as a countdown in my life. Colleagues were careful at first. Soft voices, side glances, waiting to see if I'd crack. I didn't. One afternoon, a woman I barely knew stopped by my office. "I read what you released," she said. "Something similar happened to me, years ago." I nodded, invited her to sit. "I stayed," she continued. "I convinced myself it was better than losing everything." She swallowed. "I lost myself anyway." I didn't offer comfort. I offered truth. "You didn't lose yourself," I said. "You learned what survival cost you." Her eyes filled. "That's worse," she said. "Yes," I agreed, "but it's also reversible." She left lighter than she arrived. I noticed that happening more often. Women finding me, not for guidance, not for rescue, for permission. I didn't give speeches. I didn't brand pain into wisdom quotes. I just existed visibly, unapologetically intact. That unsettles people who benefit from your silence. The last attempt to pull me back came unexpectedly. A letter, handwritten, from him. He apologized properly this time. No excuses, no self-pity, just acknowledgement. He admitted he'd chosen comfort over courage, control over honesty. He said he didn't expect forgiveness. Good. At the end, he asked one question. Was any of it real? I read that line twice. Then I burned the letter. Because some questions are just another way of asking you to rewrite history so someone else can sleep at night. I slept fine. Weeks later, I walked past the church where it had all begun. The doors were open. Another wedding, different flowers, different promises. The bride laughed. I felt no bitterness, just clarity. Love built on truth doesn't require witnesses. And truth, once spoken, doesn't need revenge to survive. I kept walking. There was one part left to tell. Not about them. About what came after. About what happens when you stop performing pain and start inhabiting your life again. This is where the story ends for anyone waiting for blood, and where it finally begins for me. People think the ending is the moment the truth wins. It isn't. That's just when the noise stops. What comes after is quieter, harder to explain, less satisfying to spectators, no villains collapsing in public, no apologies that fix anything, just mornings that belong to you again. I woke up one day and realized I hadn't checked my phone first. That's how I knew it was over. Not forgiven, not forgotten, finished. I sold the dress, not ceremoniously, online, practical. Someone else wanted the illusion. I let them have it. The money went into an account with only my name on it. That felt better than sentiment ever could. I moved, not far, just far enough that the walls didn't know my history. I chose the place myself, signed the lease alone. The quiet that followed was earned. I rebuilt slowly, deliberately. I didn't announce new beginnings. I didn't post progress photos. I didn't need witnesses anymore. That was the real revenge I never planned. I stopped explaining. When people asked what happened, I told them the truth, but briefly, cleanly, without apology. He wasn't honest. I left. That sentence filtered people better than any background check. Some leaned in, hungry for details. I didn't feed them. Some nodded and understood everything anyway. Those were the ones worth keeping. I saw my sister once, months later. By accident, in a cafe. She looked smaller. Not fragile, just diminished by her own choices. She saw me too. She didn't approach. Neither did I. Closure is not a conversation. It's the absence of one. As for him, I heard things. Always indirectly. Men like that unravel quietly. They don't crash. They corrode. Bit by bit. Trust leaks out of their lives until nothing holds. I felt no satisfaction hearing it. That surprised me. What I felt instead was distance, the kind that lets you see something clearly without needing to react to it. The woman I was before the wedding would have called that numbness. She was wrong. It was peace. I learned something important in the aftermath, something no one tells women because it makes us harder to manage. You don't owe grace to people who used your silence as shelter. You don't owe forgiveness to move on, and you don't owe pain to prove you were harmed. The best revenge isn't revenge. It's refusing to carry the weight of what wasn't yours to begin with. I didn't get the life I planned. I got the one that tells the truth. And that, quiet, unperformative, fully owned, is the only victory that lasts.